Hello and welcome to World Talks. I'm your host, Diana Skaya. Polish President Andrzej Duda's remarks in the Financial Times, where he called on the United States to position nuclear weapons on Polish soil as a way of deterring potential Russian aggression, are making rounds in the media as Europe over the past few days has witnessed a series of defense and security meetings. But now, is Europe ready to become more self-reliant in the face of seismic foreign diplomacy shifts? And what is the future of nuclear deterrence and EU defense in light of the threat? Now, joining me now to discuss is Eoin McNamara Research Fellow at the Finnish Institute of International Affairs, who has also taught extensively in international relations at the University of Tartu in Estonia and is a published author in the NATO Review. Eoin, welcome to the program. So nice to have you here on World Talks here this evening.
Good evening.
So, let's begin with the latest. Here in this interview, Polish president really calls upon the U.S. to place nuclear warheads in Poland, an offer that was never made to Poland in the first place. Now, what's your opinion on this message, and particularly the timing of when this message comes?
Well, it's quite interesting. I'd like to remind our viewers, first of all, that we have U.S. nuclear weapons stationed in other countries in Europe through NATO's nuclear sharing initiative. So having U.S. nuclear weapons shared in Europe is not too unusual. Germany has U.S. nuclear weapons, Italy, the Netherlands and Belgium, I believe. These countries, and there might be a few more, I'd have to check my records, but these weapons haven't been shared with an eastern flank nation. The timing is getting rather serious because things in Ukraine, matters in Ukraine are difficult. We don't know if Russia's going to come out of the war in Ukraine with more momentum to try and consolidate a sphere of influence. That could mean an attack on Poland or the Baltic states. So I think the comments by the president show this fear, and of course nuclear weapons are seen as the ultimate deterrent to keep your security watertight. So yes, definitely an interesting request.
Eoin, I just want to take you back through something we just saw on our screens just a few seconds earlier. President Duda mentioned, he quoted that NATO's borders moved east in 1999. Therefore, NATO's infrastructure should also shift east. Now, how exactly would this perspective align with NATO's current strategic posture?
It would align, strategically, militarily. It would make sense to shore up security on the eastern flank. That said, of course, these nuclear weapons that are shared tactically with other European nations, they are still right now can be used for deterrence. That serves Poland, serves the Baltic states as well. So simply because a nuclear deterrent has its infrastructure in another nation doesn't mean that NATO is not all for one and one for all. NATO is that. But I think symbolically this would be significant to kind of cross that bridge. And of course, politically, because NATO did sign the NATO-Russia Founding Act with Russia in 1997, but of course Russia, through its aggressive behavior since the war in Georgia in 2008, has really violated the spirit of that, if not the letter of that, in the years since. So it would be really showing, I think the promise there was no troops, no nukes forward. So we've had troops. Are we about to have nukes? That is what the president of Poland right now, that's the discussion that has been opened.
Eoin, but would you say that maybe Andrzej Duda's proposal comes or could be seen as a response to the deployment of Russian nuclear weapons in Belarus?
Yes, we can see it that way. Also, the timing is quite interesting because we've also had discussions elsewhere, maybe on the fringes of the political debate, of an independent nuclear deterrent for Poland. If NATO breaks down, there's been a lot of discussion about NATO breaking down and US commitment to NATO under Donald Trump. This is, the Trump administration throwing the cat amongst the pigeons. So in one way, we could see, Poland looking for NATO's nuclear sharing to be extended in this way as kind of the more moderate option rather than Poland going it alone, so to say, with its own nuclear deterrent.
And just to go in a little bit deeper into what you just said, how might, stationing of, let's say, those U.S. nuclear weapons in Poland actually affect the security dynamics of Eastern Europe? Particularly concerning neighboring countries like Belarus and the Russian exclave of Kaliningrad.
Well, these nuclear weapons that have been shared so far are, under NATO's nuclear sharing are tactical weapons. They're not strategic weapons. And as I say, if an attack is planned from a delivery system in Belarus or from a delivery system in Kaliningrad, NATO can still respond to that with its delivery systems elsewhere. It doesn't have to be actually based on Polish territory. Nevertheless, I think symbolically, I think politically, it could be seen by those who favor this in Poland and maybe in the Baltic states as well as a kind of a doubling down on NATO's commitment to the region, that NATO, that the eastern flank nations are the same as everything, or are the same as all other parts of NATO, and NATO will do all that it can to defend its territory. So the complexity of this is manifold.
It definitely is complex. But Eoin, let me ask you this. You are a research fellow at the Finnish Institute of International Affairs. So let's talk about Finland for a moment. Is Finland, who is now a member of NATO, would consider taking nuclear weapons to its soil?
I don't think so at the moment. I think that is a very, very long way off in prospect. Finland, of course, and indeed Sweden, that joined NATO recently. Within NATO, they still see value in NATO's extended deterrence. And of course, if under NATO's nuclear sharing, if weapons were shared with Poland, then Poland would become a stronger part of that extended deterrence as well, serving not just Poland, but the wider region and wider NATO. But things have to go a very, very long way in the chain of escalation before we get to that level. And right now, it is said in Finland, with extended deterrence supplied by the US and the United Kingdom, primarily within NATO, that Finland is updating its understanding on this, its nuclear IQ, but still a lot of the emphasis is on conventional deterrence. Finland's conventional forces, primarily its artillery systems and its large conscription base, that's still primarily the focus of Finnish defense right now, acting independently for its own independent defense, collectively as a NATO ally, to be a strong lock for security in Northern Europe.
If all of this were to happen, Eoin, we're talking about all of this, about Andrzej Duda's remarks, and these possibilities of stationing this. Now, what implications would this actually have for NATO-Russia relations? What scenarios could we be looking at?
Well, I think for NATO, the Russians always, when they move weapons around, a lot of it is political. It's to kind of show when they move weapons into Belarus, or when they talk about their delivery systems in Kaliningrad, they're saying, these are our weapons and we can do what we like about them. It's also to kind of signal to the West more and more that that they have a very strong grasp on Belarus, and Belarus is very much firmly part of the Russian strategic theater. And what we do with our weapons is our business. But that's the same on the other side with NATO as well. NATO should think about, nothing should be cast in stone. The world changes, the strategic environment changes, and NATO should also think about adjusting its strategic posture as it sees fit. But of course, this would ratchet up at least political tension in NATO-Russia relations. There's no doubt about that. But at the same time, it's very, very important that NATO does best to protect its eastern allies. So at least from what the Polish president has said. We're having a debate, we're having a discussion about this, but I think some of the end results we could be talking about here are still a long way off.
And Eoin, very briefly, long-term borrowing for Rearm Europe is going to reach 800 billion euros. How likely is this? What can you tell us about this?
Well, this is a European Union initiative. I think it's very important. We've had EU initiatives on defence spending before, the European Defence Fund, and going back to the Helsinki headline goals for spending on the European Union's common foreign and security policy, going back to the year 2000, soon after the common foreign, or not the common foreign security policy, sorry, the common security and defence policy, rather, going back a long time. Some goals have been met, some goals have not been met. But now I think it's a time for action, and it's a very, very serious time for the European Union. So we need to meet our spending goals. We need to put our money where our mouth is in terms of our ambition. And it's not just spending. Spending, the input of spending is very, very important. But it's also our commitment to that spending and the capabilities to defend Europe that we get out of that spending. That's very, very important. So spending is only one side of the equation. If we spend this money, we have to ensure that we get very, very strong capabilities, military capabilities, to keep our prosperity safe in Europe from that investment.
Thank you so much, Eoin McNamara, Research Fellow at the Finnish Institute of International Affairs, for being our guest here this evening on World Talks.
Thank you very much.
And that's all for this edition of World Talks. I'm Diana Skaya. Thanks for watching, and do stay tuned on TVP World for more news and features.